He wanted me to host Thanksgiving dinner for his ex. He didn't know I had already sent an invitation of my own. He called me predictable, a wife who did exactly as she was told. He would never guess what was about to happen in his own dining room. By the time dessert was served, they would both lose everything, and I would be the one holding the plate. My name is Alara, and I am 32 years old. I live in a cage, though you would call it a penthouse. From up here, the whole of Cherry Creek in Denver looks like a scale model, a toy city I can look at but never touch. The air inside is always the same temperature, filtered and sterile. The walls are painted in a rotation of beige, dove gray, and muted ash. They are Marcus's colors. None of them are mine. My husband, Marcus Thorne, is 38. He is a man on the rise at Apex Strategy Group, a title that means he spends more time communing with the glowing rectangle in his hand than with the person breathing next to him. Right now, he was doing just that, scrolling through market reports while I stood by the window. Invisible, he controls everything. It did not happen all at once, but in a series of small, reasonable corrosions. My bank account is linked to his. The app on his phone pings every time I buy a $5 latte. My closet is a mausoleum of beige cashmere and severe navy sheaths that he approved, claiming they reflected his station. My old wardrobe, full of bright colors and sharp, interesting cuts, vanished during our last seasonal clear-out. 4 years ago, he convinced me to quit my job. I was a data analyst, and I was good at it. I loved the clarity of numbers, the way a story could be found in the noise. Marcus called it a distraction. He said I was too smart to be wasting my time building spreadsheets for someone else. Now, I build his social calendar. I arrange catering. I ensure his steaks are always a perfect bloody medium rare. I am the chief operating officer of his comfort. He finally looked up, his eyes unfocused as they adjusted to the room. Sasha Reed is back in town, he announced. The statement was dropped into the silent room with the same casual indifference he used to mention a stock fluctuation. My stomach tightened. Sasha, the college girlfriend, the one he always referred to with a specific kind of nostalgic sigh. The New York job, the one who got away narrative he loved to spin after his second glass of bourbon. She moved back from New York, he continued, already looking back at his screen. You'll host Thanksgiving dinner, and Sasha's coming. She's a bit lonely, adjusting to the move. He said it, not, I was thinking, or, would you mind? He said, you will. I tried to keep my voice light, reasonable. Marcus, Thanksgiving. That's usually just family. My sister was planning to fly in. He sighed, a sound of profound impatience. It was the sound he made when a waiter was too slow or when I misunderstood a request. Don't make this difficult. Alara, it's just a dinner. Sasha is an old friend. Just be appropriate. There it was. Appropriate. The word he used to correct me, to file down any sharp edges I had left. His tone was not that of a husband speaking to a wife, but of a disappointed father scolding a child who had failed a simple test. The cold, familiar sting of humiliation washed over me. I forced the muscles in my face to arrange themselves into a smile, the smile he preferred, accepting, pliant, and empty. Of course, I'll add her to the list. Does she have any allergies I should know about? Good, he said, his attention already gone, his thumb resuming its rhythmic swipe. He had his answer. The matter was closed. That night, sleep was impossible. The filtered air in the bedroom felt thick, unbreathable. I lay perfectly still, listening to the sound of Marcus's deep, untroubled breathing. He slept the sleep of a man who gets exactly what he wants, a man who believes the world is structured entirely for his convenience. He had no idea. He looked at me and saw a simple, predictable equation. He saw the beige walls of his perfect apartment. He couldn't see the analyst underneath, the woman who had spent 4 years gathering data. He had no idea that his predictable, appropriate wife had just started to run the numbers. It was 2 a.m. The silence of the penthouse was absolute, broken only by the hum of the air filtration. Then, a new sound, a low, insistent vibration against the wood of the nightstand. It was not his phone. His phone was on his side of the bed, dark and silent. This was the other one, the work phone, the one he claimed was necessary for sensitive clients, the one that was never left lying around. It was sitting on the wireless charging pad on his dresser, and it was buzzing. A sick, morbid curiosity, a feeling I had suppressed for years, finally took over. I slid out of bed. The plush carpet muffled my footsteps. Marcus didn't stir. I stood in front of the dresser, the phone vibrating again, lighting up with a preview I could not read from this angle. I picked it up. My fingers were numb. I expected a 6-digit passcode, a facial recognition scan, a wall I could not pass. There was nothing. It opened with a simple swipe. He had become that arrogant, that sure of me, that certain of my compliance. The message app was already open. The name at the top was Sasha. My thumb trembled as I tapped the thread. I expected to see "I miss you" or "can't wait to see you." That would have been bad enough. This was worse. This was logistics, plans. I scrolled up, past the message that woke me, past the one from yesterday. I scrolled and scrolled. Months. It went back for months. Pictures I had never seen. Him laughing in a bar I did not recognize. Her wrapped in a hotel robe, smiling at the camera. Promises of a future, discussions of his bonus, references to his situation. My situation. Me. Just a little more patience. One of his messages read, sent 3 weeks ago. After Thanksgiving, she'll know her place. I promise. She'll know her place. The phrase echoed in the sterile quiet. I kept scrolling, a digital archaeologist digging at my own grave. And then I found the message that stopped my heart. It was from him to her, sent just last week. Alara is too simple. She'll never suspect. She does exactly what she's told. My vision tunneled. The beige walls seemed to pulse. Too simple. All those years, all my suppressed intelligence, all the accommodations I had made, he had not seen them as sacrifices. He had seen them as my defining trait. I kept reading. This was not just an affair. This was a coup. The Thanksgiving dinner was not a reunion. It was, as he'd phrased it, a soft launch. The plan was laid out in horrifying detail. Sasha was not just coming as an old friend. She was coming as his future, his partners, the ones he was so desperate to impress, would be there. The plan was for Sasha, with her New York energy, to charm them, to look the part of the dynamic, powerful woman he needed by his side. And I was the backdrop. I was the dowdy, appropriate wife, the relic of his old life. I was meant to look boring, domestic, and utterly out of place beside her. She'll be serving us, Sasha had joked in one message. It's what she's good at, he'd replied. The final message I read was the one that sealed it. It was from Marcus. She'll be so humiliated. She'll file for divorce herself before New Year's. It's cleaner that way. Trust me. I did not cry. I did not throw the phone against the wall. The hot, suffocating fever of betrayal, the one I had been living with for years without naming it, finally broke. It did not leave me weak. It left me cold. It left me clear. The humiliation was still there, a hot coil in my stomach, but it was no longer a prison. It was fuel. I looked at the man in my bed, my husband, the man who thought I was simple. He had just handed me the data set I needed. My hands were perfectly steady. I carefully closed the app. I did not wipe the message. I did not change a single thing. I placed the phone back on the wireless charger, exactly as I had found it, just as the screen went dark. The shock was over. Now, it was time for data analysis. The next morning, I was Ilara, the perfect wife. I was awake at 6 a.m., long before his alarm. The coffee was brewing, its aroma calculated to be welcoming. When Marcus emerged, tightening the knot on his silk tie, I was waiting with his cup black, just how he liked it. "I've been working on the Thanksgiving menu," I said, my voice perfectly modulated to sound helpful and domestic. "You mentioned Sasha is coming. I want to make sure she feels welcome. Does she still love that pumpkin cheesecake with the ginger snap crust?" He actually paused, impressed. "That's right, she does." "Good memory." "Ilara, I just want everything to be perfect for you," I said, smiling that simple, appropriate smile. "You said your partners are coming. I'll make sure the house looks immaculate." "Good, that's good," he said, already distracted, grabbing his briefcase and the second phone. He kissed the air near my cheek. "See you tonight." The moment the deadbolt clicked shut, the performance ended. I did not wash the coffee cups. I did not start on the menu. I walked directly into his study. It was his sanctuary. All dark wood and black leather. A room designed to intimidate. In the corner, behind a heavy, framed abstract painting, was the wall safe. I pulled the painting aside. The keypad glowed. His arrogance was my key. His birthday. The most predictable code on Earth. 10241986. The mechanism clicked open. Inside, beneath a velvet box holding a watch he never wore and stacks of bonds, was a thick, legal-sized envelope. My name and his were typed on the label. The prenuptial agreement. I took it to his desk, the one I was never supposed to sit at, and I spread the pages out. My hands were steady. I was no longer a wife. I was an analyst reviewing a flawed system. The terms were, as expected, brutal. I read the sanitized, cruel language. We had been married for 4 years and 8 months. I saw the cliff immediately. A 5-year anniversary. If the marriage was terminated before that date, just 4 months from now, I would walk away with a single, lump sum payment. It was a fraction of what I had brought into the marriage, an amount so small it was designed to be an insult. And the apartment, this sterile beige box in the sky, would remain his sole property. It did not matter that my inheritance, the last of my mother's money, had paid for the entire deposit. He had structured it as a loan to his personal holding company, a loan I was never meant to see again. He was planning to execute his soft launch at Thanksgiving, humiliate me into leaving, and cut me off just weeks before our assets would have legally combined. I turned the page. My eyes scanned the boilerplate, the definitions, the waivers, and then I found it. Clause 17. The title was innocuous, Conditions of Forfeiture, but the text was dynamite. In the event of indisputable proof, I read aloud to the empty room, of infidelity on the part of either party, resulting in the dissolution of the marriage, all prenuptial conditions stated herein shall be rendered null and void. Null and void. The contract, this prison of paper, had a self-destruct mechanism. He had insisted on this clause. I remembered his lawyer arguing against it, but Marcus, in his magnificent hubris, wanted a weapon. He assumed if anyone strayed, it would be the simple, boring wife he kept locked in this tower. He never, not for 1 second, imagined it could be used against him. Indisputable proof. A slow, cold smile touched my lips. The man who called me simple had just defined the terms of his own destruction. He thought he was writing a contract. He had given me a project scope. Data, after all, was my native language. I took out my phone. I laid each page flat on his desk, smoothing the creases. I photographed every single line, every signature, every damning comma. I paid special attention to Clause 17. I photographed it twice. I opened a new, encrypted email account I had created 6 months prior, an escape route I had built, just in case. I attached the files. I sent them to the secure cloud. I watched the progress bar hit 100%. Then, I meticulously reassembled the document. I placed it back in the envelope. I slotted the envelope back in the safe. behind the watch box, exactly as it had been. I closed the heavy steel door, spun the dial, and wiped the keypad clean. I slid the abstract painting back into place, ensuring the corner was perfectly level. The room was unchanged. The trap was set. The game was on. I needed capital. A project like this required resources, and my joint checking account was a fishbowl. But Marcus didn't know everything. He didn't know about the Vanguard investment account I had kept from my analyst days, a rainy day fund I had quietly fed with a small percentage of my bonuses. It had been sitting there for 5 years, growing. It was my rainy day. It was pouring. I liquidated $20,000. The transfer was silent, moving from one anonymous account to a new, clean checking account under my maiden name, opened at a bank branch 3 towns over. I spent the next 6 hours in the guest bedroom, the one room he never entered, my laptop on my knees. I was not looking for the cheapest private investigator. I was not looking for the one with the flashiest website. I was looking for a ghost. My search terms were forensic accounting, complex divorce, and discreet surveillance Denver. The same name kept appearing in niche legal forums, mentioned in hushed, respectful tones. Jenna Diaz. She was ex-Denver PD, a detective who had quit the force to go private. Her specialty was high-asset divorce cases where the other party was powerful. Her reputation was that she did not exist until she had the evidence, and by then, it was too over. She had no flashy website, just a corporate services shell company and a burnable phone number. I called the number. A woman's voice, flat and professional, answered. Diaz Solutions. I need a consultation regarding a sensitive data recovery project, I said, using the coded language the forums suggested. Location. I gave her the address of a diner in Inglewood, miles from the polished glass and steel of Cherry Creek. It was a place with vinyl booths, weak coffee, and absolute anonymity. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., she said, and hung up. The next day, I dressed in my old clothes, a pair of jeans, and a dark blue sweater, items Marcus would have called sloppy. I took a rideshare, paid in cash I'd withdrawn, and walked the last 3 blocks. Jenna Diaz was already there, in a back booth, nursing a black coffee. She looked nothing like a detective from a movie. She looked like an overtired accountant, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes sharp and assessing. She was invisible. She was perfect. I slid into the booth. I didn't order anything. You have 5 minutes to convince me to take your case, she said, not looking up from her cup. I put a plain manila envelope on the table. I don't need confirmation, I said, my voice as flat as hers. I already have that. I am retaining you to acquire indisputable, admissible proof, per the terms of Clause 17 of a binding legal document. Her eyes finally lifted. The boredom was gone. I had her attention. Go on. I need visuals, video, time-stamped photos. I need credit card statements, hotel folios, car rental agreements. I need any digital communication you can legally acquire. I am building a case for a forfeiture clause. It has to be airtight. Jenna leaned back, a small, impressed smile playing on her lips. Clause 17. You've done your homework. Most clients just come in crying, holding a lipstick-stained shirt. I'm not most clients, I said. I'm a data analyst. My husband is Marcus Thorne of Apex Strategy Group. The other party is Sasha Reed. She just moved back from New York. I pushed the envelope across the table. Inside is your $5,000 retainer in cash. There are also 2 printed photographs, one of my husband, one of her. Their car models and license plates, his work schedule, her new apartment address in Lodo. Jenna picked up the envelope and weighed it in her hand. He's high profile, she's new in town. This is clean. What's your timeline? Thanksgiving, I said. It's in 3 weeks. I need the full package delivered before then. That's fast. That's why the retainer is $5,000, not 2. She nodded. You'll get your package. I'll need a dead drop. No mail. No email. I gave her the address of a post office box I had opened that morning. It's under a name you won't recognize. I stood up. I look forward to reviewing your data. When I returned to the penthouse, the sterile air felt different. It was no longer my prison. It was my office. I spent the rest of the afternoon drafting the perfect Thanksgiving menu. Marcus came home late, smelling faintly of a perfume that was not mine. He found me on the sofa, scrolling through recipes for artisan bread stuffing. "You're in a good mood," he said, loosening his tie. "I'm just getting excited about the party," I said, looking up with a warm, simple smile. "I'm so glad you suggested inviting Sasha. It's mature. It feels good to be so mature about things. Doesn't it?" He smiled, condescending and pleased. "Yes, Alara. It does. I'm proud of you. I just want everything to be perfect for you, darling," I said. And I meant it. It took 3 days. 3 days of performing the role of the diligent wife, discussing the merits of different turkey brines with Marcus and finalizing the guest list for his partners. My outward self was calm, efficient, and beige. Inside, I was a coiled spring, every nerve ending waiting for the data. On the 3rd morning, I left the apartment, telling Marcus I was scouting a new farmer's market for fresher produce. I drove my car, the one he let me keep, to the small anonymous post office in Inglewood. The key felt cold in my hand as I opened the metal box. Inside, there was only a single, plain, white padded envelope. No name, no return address. I took it, walked back to my car, and locked the doors. My heart was hammering against my ribs. A trapped bird. I opened the envelope. There was no note, just a single black USB flash drive. I pulled my old laptop, the one from my data analyst days, from its hiding spot under the spare tire in my trunk. I never let Marcus touch it. I booted it up. The parking lot was empty. I inserted the drive. One click. A single folder appeared, evidence. I opened it. The contents were organized with chilling efficiency. The first subfolder was Thorn Reed Surveillance. I clicked it. The pictures loaded, one by one, each a nail in my husband's coffin. Long lens shots, time-stamped. Marcus and Sasha, not at a coffee shop, not at a friendly lunch. They were at the Brown Palace Hotel. The images showed them entering the lobby at 1:18 p.m. on a Tuesday, his hand possessively on the small of her back. The next shot was them at the elevator bank, her head thrown back in laughter. The last was them leaving. Hours later, at 4:52 p.m., they looked satisfied. The next folder was Financials. Jenna was thorough. Scans of his personal credit card, the one I wasn't allowed to see. The charge from the Brown Palace was clearly itemized, and beneath it, a bank transfer, a wire, $50,000 sent from his personal account directly to the management company of the luxury Lodo apartment building Sasha lived in. The memo line read, "Deposit and furnishings." He was not just nostalgic, he was invested. This was it. This was the indisputable proof. Clause 17 was active. I had him. I should have felt victory. I should have closed the laptop, my project complete. But there was another folder, one that sat at the bottom of the directory. Its name was Out of Scope Matter. My curiosity, the trait Marcus had worked so hard to extinguish, flared to life. What had the ghost in the diner found that she felt was necessary, but not part of the brief I opened the folder? My blood ran cold. It was Sasha. She was seated in a dark, expensive-looking restaurant. She was leaning forward, her hand covering a man's hand on the table. She was looking at him with the same predatory, adoring look she had given Marcus in the hotel photos, but the man was not Marcus. This man was older, in his late 50s, with a distinguished mane of silver hair and a suit that cost more than my first car. I knew him instantly. I had smiled at him. I had served him appetizers in this very apartment at last year's Christmas party. It was Julian Vance, the married, untouchable, billionaire CEO of Apex Strategy Group, the man who held my husband's entire career in the palm of his hand. My hand was shaking. I clicked on the single text file in the folder. It was a note from Jenna. It was not conversational. It was a report. Subject Sasha Reed is maintaining two distinct parallel relationships. Target 1, Marcus Thorne. Meetings documented Tuesday afternoon, Brown Palace. Thursday evening, subject's residence. Target 2, Julian Vance. Meetings documented Monday dinner, Palace Arms. Wednesday afternoon, Four Seasons. Financial review confirms subject's apartment deposit was paid by Thorne. Utility and rental payments appear to be handled by Vance. No indication of crossover. Neither target appears aware of the other. This data stream is outside the parameters of our agreement. Please advise if you wish to pursue. I closed the laptop. I could not breathe. The lonely ex-girlfriend, the one who needed a family Thanksgiving, was a shark. She was not choosing between Marcus and Julian. She was using them both. She was using Julian, the CEO, for power, for access, for a fast track to the top. And she was using Marcus, the ambitious, handsome, rising executive, as her backup plan, her safe future. She would use Vance to get the job she wanted, and then settle down with Marcus as the stable husband. My plan to ruin Marcus at a holiday dinner felt like a child's tantrum. This was not a domestic dispute. This was a complex, multi-level game of corporate espionage and emotional fraud. My simple, predictable plan had just become infinitely more complex and infinitely more dangerous. And I was holding all the variables. I sat in the cold car, the USB drive a heavy weight in my palm. My plan, which had been so linear and clean, was now a chaotic, multidimensional mess. The original objective was simple expose Marcus, nullify the prenup, destroy him, but if I did that, I would only be eliminating my problem. Sasha Reed would remain untouched. She would discard Marcus, her backup plan, like a piece of trash. She would pivot, solidify her relationship with Julian Vance, and use his immense power to get the high-level position she was obviously angling for at Apex. She would win. She would have used my husband, played the CEO, and faced zero consequences. I could not, and would not, let that happen. I saw the chessboard with perfect, cold clarity. Marcus was desperate for the partner promotion. It was all he talked about. Sasha, returning to Denver, was clearly aiming for a senior role at the same company. She was not just sleeping with the CEO, she was using him to clear the board. She was likely using his influence to sabotage the very rivals Marcus was competing against, positioning herself as the only viable candidate. She was playing a game of corporate warfare, and Marcus was just a pawn she was willing to sacrifice. I could not go to Julian. He would bury the evidence, pay for silence, and dispose of the threat. I could not go to Marcus. His explosive, arrogant pride would lead him to a suicidal confrontation with his own boss, and he would lose everything before I could execute my plan. I needed an ally whose interests were as aligned as mine. An ally who had just as much to lose, or perhaps more. An ally whose objective was the same, the complete and total neutralization of Sasha Reed. I needed his wife, Naomi Vance. Her name was a pillar in Denver society. She was not a corporate wife in the way I was. She was the chair of the Vance Family Foundation. She sat on the board of the Denver Art Museum, the Children's Hospital, and, most importantly, two major financial trusts. The quiet, persistent rumor among the Denver elite was that the vast majority of the Vance fortune was hers, inherited and managed with a famously sharp mind. Julian was the CEO, but Naomi was the power. She was not a woman who would tolerate being made a fool of. She was not a woman who could be ignored. I drove to a public library miles from Cherry Creek. I sat at a public terminal, my face obscured by the hood of a sweatshirt I kept in my trunk. I created a new, untraceable email address. The username was Apex Watcher. I found her personal email address. It was not public, but it was listed in the annual donor report for the hospital foundation, a report I had downloaded from their website months ago while researching potential charities for Marcus's social profile. I drafted the email. It was precise. The subject line, a confidential matter regarding Julian Vance. I did not write a letter. I did not plead or explain. I attached one file, the single, clearest, most damning photograph Jenna had taken Julian and Sasha outside the Palace Arms restaurant, caught in a passionate kiss, his hand tangled in her hair. It was undeniable. I hit send. I sat there, my stomach hollow, watching the timer on the computer screen. It took less than 5 minutes. An email alert popped up. The reply was not from an assistant. It was from her personal encrypted account. It contained only 4 words. "What do you want?" My fingers flew across the keyboard. "This is not about money. I am not an employee. I have reason to believe this woman is simultaneously involved with my husband." The reply was instant. "Who is your husband?" "Marcus Thorne. He works for your husband." A pause. This one lasted a full 60 seconds. I imagined her processing the names, the connections, the audacity. The new message arrived. Where? I had to choose the location with absolute precision. It needed to be her turf, so she felt in control, but public enough that I felt safe. "The Rilke Gallery," I typed. "The private contemporary wing. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. I will find you." It was a private, appointment-only gallery where she was the most prominent client. We would be surrounded by priceless art and security, yet we would be completely alone. The final reply came. "I will be there at 2 o'clock. Bring your phone." The alliance was forged. The Rilke Gallery's private wing was silent. The only sound the faint hum of climate control protecting millions of dollars of German expressionist art. The walls were stark white, the lighting precise. It was the most expensive and most sterile public space in Denver. I arrived at 1:55 p.m. The curator, who knew Naomi Vance by sight, had been told to expect a guest and let me in without a word. At 2 o'clock on the dot, I heard the click of heels on the polished concrete floor. Naomi Vance appeared. She was exactly as I had seen her in magazines, but more so. She was tall, perhaps 50, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit that screamed quiet, generational wealth. Her gray hair was cut in a sharp, modern bob. Her eyes were a pale, piercing blue, and they held no warmth whatsoever. She stopped 10 feet away from me. "You have 5 minutes." "Thank you for meeting me," I said, my voice steady. "I have the information on this phone. It's offline and secure." I held up my personal, clean phone, not the one from the library. I had transferred Jenna's files and the photos I had taken of Marcus's second phone screen. "I don't care about your husband," she said, her voice cutting. "Show me what you have on mine." "It's not that simple," I said. "You need to see the entire data set. You need to see how they are connected." I opened the gallery. First, I showed her the time-stamped photos of Julian and Sasha at the Palace Arms. She did not flinch. Her expression was utterly neutral, as if I were showing her a weather report. She had suspected. This was just confirmation. "And this," I said, swiping, "is my husband, Marcus, with Sasha, at the Brown Palace Hotel, 2 days after her date with yours." Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. She was processing the timeline. "She's running them in parallel," I said. "But this is what you really need to see." I swiped to the last file. These were the photos I had taken in the dark, at 2 a.m. of the screen of Marcus's unlocked work phone, the text thread between him and Sasha. "This is a conversation they had last week," I said, zooming in on the text. Sasha's message read, "I just feel bad for you, stuck with that boring little wife. At least Julian is fun. The man has power." Marcus's reply, "He's also 60. Don't forget that part." Sasha's reply, "He's an easy old fool." Marcus, "He's so busy sitting on boards and planning charity galas she wouldn't notice if the house was on fire." That was it. That was the moment. The infidelity was a business matter. This was a personal insult. The blood drained from Naomi's face, leaving behind a marble white mask. Her eyes, which had been cold, were now glacial. The 5-minute time limit was forgotten. "She called me," Naomi whispered, not to me, but to herself. "She said I wouldn't notice." She thinks she's smarter than everyone, I said quietly. She's using your husband to get a senior position at Apex, one that my husband is also competing for. And she's using my husband as her future, her safe landing spot once she's done with Julian. She's playing them both. I locked the phone. And this Thursday, she is coming to my home for Thanksgiving dinner. As my husband's honored guest, Naomi looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. The mask of the society philanthropist was gone. This was the woman who managed trusts worth billions. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you and Julian to show up," I said. "At my home, unannounced, at 7:30 p.m. We'll be serving the main course right at that time." Naomi understood instantly. She saw the scene, the dining room, the partners, the mistress, the wife, a public, inescapable detonation. She'll be fired on the spot. It will be a catastrophic scandal. Marcus will be terminated as well. "He will lose his job," I said, meeting her icy gaze. "But I will handle my husband. I have a provision in our prenuptial agreement. He will lose everything." A long silence stretched between us, filled only by the hum of the air system. Naomi Vance looked at the painting behind me, a slash of angry red on a black canvas. "He'll refuse to come," she said. "Julian. He'll deny. He'll lie. He'll try to gaslight me." "You won't tell him why," I said. "You'll just tell him that you are attending a Thanksgiving drop-in at his top executive's home, and his presence is required. You'll make it a command performance." Naomi's lips curved into something that was not a smile. It was a judgment. "She called me predictable," she said. "They both called me simple," I replied. "They're about to find out how wrong they are." She nodded. 7:30. We will be there. Send me the address." She turned, her heels clicking on the floor. "Naomi," I called out. She paused. "Make sure your turkey is worth the drama," she said, without looking back. The week leading up to Thanksgiving was the strangest one of our marriage. It was a week of unsettling kindness. Marcus, who usually only noticed my existence when he needed something, became bizarrely charming. On Monday, a bouquet of white lilies arrived. The card simply read, "For my patient wife." On Tuesday, he came home early, before 7 p.m., and suggested we open a bottle of wine. He sat in the kitchen, watching me prep vegetables, a sight so rare I almost broke character. "You know," he said, swirling the Cabernet in his glass, "I really appreciate you being so cool about Sasha." I chopped a carrot with perfect, even strokes. "It's fine. Marcus, she's an old friend." "She is," he said, a nostalgic, faraway look in his eyes. "It's going to be great, just like the old days, before things got so complicated. Before me." He meant, I smiled, the docile, simple wife. "I'm looking forward to it." I leaned into the role. The penthouse, which had been my sterile prison, became a stage set for the perfect Thanksgiving. I cooked, I baked, I cleaned. I spent hours simmering stock, roasting root vegetables, and preparing pie crusts. The sterile, filtered air became thick with the scent of cinnamon, rosemary, and sage. It was the scent of a happy home, a comforting domestic lie. Marcus was delighted. "It smells incredible in here, Ilara," he'd say, patting my shoulder as he passed. He saw my activity as nesting, as acceptance. He saw it as me settling into my domestic role, just as he was preparing to end it. His guilt was making him kind. His arrogance was making him blind. I had one more piece to put in place. While I was rolling out a pie crust, my hands covered in flour, I used my voice assistant to make a call. The phone rang twice. "Well, look who it is," a sharp, familiar voice answered. I was beginning to think my best friend had been officially absorbed into the beige Borg collective. "Chloe," I said, my voice low. "Ilara, are you okay?" "You sound weird." "I am," I said. "And I need a favor. I need you here for Thanksgiving dinner." A beat of silence. Chloe despised Marcus. She had not set foot in our apartment in over 3 years, not since a disastrous dinner where she'd called him a charismatic sociopath to his face. Thanksgiving. At your place with him. Are you being held hostage? Blink twice if you need me to call the police. I'm serious. Chloe, I need you here. Thursday, 6 p.m. She heard the new tone in my voice. The analyst, not the wife. What's going on? Don't bring a gift. Bring your phone. Make sure it's fully charged, and make sure you have plenty of storage. The moment you walk in, I need you to start recording audio, and keep it recording, no matter what happens. Another pause. Longer. Then, a slow, delighted intake of breath. Oh my God, she whispered. It's happening. You're finally doing it. Are you in? Am I in, Alara? I have been waiting for this call for 4 years. I would cancel a meeting with the president to be there. I'll be there at 6 on the dot, and I'll have a broadcast quality recorder in my purse. He'll never see it. Thank you, Chloe. No, she said, her voice full of sudden, fierce loyalty. Thank you. It's about time you burned that dollhouse to the ground. I hung up. The next evening, Marcus saw me setting the enormous dining table. The finest china, the crystal he'd insisted we buy, the heavy silver. I placed another setting, next to mine, angled away from him. Who's that for? He asked, not looking up from his phone. I thought it was just us, the partners, and Sasha. It's just Chloe, I said breezily. I thought it would be nice to have her. It's been so long. He shrugged, an indifferent gesture. Fine. Whatever. Just try to keep her from insulting my guests. In his mind, Chloe was no threat. She was just another detail, as harmless and irrelevant as I was. The night before Thanksgiving, the apartment was pristine. The turkey was brining. The pies were cooling on the counter. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the spotless, cold chrome counters. Marcus came up behind me. He put his hands on my shoulders. I had to fight the urge to flinch. He turned me around. He was smiling, that same patronizing, proud smile. He reached up and patted my cheek, a gesture he used for a dog that had behaved. Thanks for being so understanding about all this, he said. You're a good girl. Alara, you really are the best wife. I met his gaze and held it. I put my hand over his on my cheek. I smiled my simple, perfect, appropriate smile. I just want everyone to be happy. Marcus. Thanksgiving Day arrived under a cold, clear Denver sky. The apartment was pristine, every surface gleaming. I was dressed in a simple, high-necked gray cashmere dress one of his picks. I looked appropriate. I looked invisible. Chloe arrived at 6 p.m., exactly on time. She was wearing a sharp black blazer and jeans, looking every bit the investigative journalist. She bypassed the polite air kiss and pulled me into a fierce, brief hug. Storm's coming in, she whispered in my ear, pulling back to look me in the eyes. Category 5. I just nodded once. Her gaze hardened with loyalty. Good, she said, her voice returning to a normal, cheerful volume. Wow, Alara, the place smells like a food magazine. Where's the man of the hour? Right here. Marcus called, walking in from the bedroom. He had put on his host persona, all charm and teeth. Chloe, been a long time. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Marcus, she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She placed her purse on the entryway console. I saw her tap the side of it, a tiny, imperceptible motion. The recording had begun. The other guests, his 2 partners and their wives, arrived in a flurry of expensive coats and polite laughter. I served champagne. I was the perfect hostess, gliding through the room, refilling glasses, offering canapés. Then, at 6:30, the doorbell rang again. Marcus's entire posture changed. He straightened his tie, a genuine, eager smile spreading across his face. He did not walk to the door. He strode, like a man greeting a prize he had already won. He opened it. Sasha, you made it. Sasha Reed did not enter the room. She made an entrance. She was poured into a silk dress the color of arterial blood. It was cut low, and it clung to her. It was a dress for a nightclub, for a conquest. It was completely, spectacularly inappropriate for a Thanksgiving dinner with his colleagues. And it was entirely the point. She air-kissed Marcus, letting her hand linger on his chest. Then she turned to me, her eyes sweeping over my gray dress with a look of profound pity. She held out a bottle of wine, a ridiculously expensive French label. "Ilara, thank you so much for having me," she said, her voice a low, throaty purr. "You must have been working so hard all week. This is just lovely." "It was no trouble, Sasha," I said, taking the bottle. "Welcome to our home." We sat at the table, the one I had so carefully set. The trap was laid. Marcus insisted Sasha sit to his right, in the place of honor. I sat at the other end of the table, the dutiful, forgotten wife. Chloe sat to my left. The dinner began, and so did the performance. Marcus and Sasha held court. They were electric, finishing each other's sentences, laughing. They reminisced about college, about trips he and I had never taken, about old professors and shared jokes that required no explanation for them and offered none for the rest of us. His partners were charmed. Their wives looked slightly uncomfortable. Sasha was brilliant. I had to give her that. She played her role to perfection. She would turn to me, as if suddenly remembering I was there. "Ilara, this stuffing is amazing," she said, her voice bright with false kindness. "I've tried to make it from scratch, but who has the time? It's wonderful that you have so much free time to focus on things like this." Marcus chuckled. "She's a miracle worker in the kitchen. Don't know what I'd do without her." Later, Sasha gestured to my dress. "That color is so elegant on you. Very classic." Classic. The word for something old, something you put in a museum. Chloe's wine glass clinked as she set it down, just a fraction too hard. I kept smiling. I stood and began to clear the appetizer plates. "If you'll excuse me, I'll bring out the turkey." I returned from the kitchen carrying the heavy, perfectly browned turkey on its platter. I placed it in the center of the table. It was a masterpiece. I picked up the carving knife, but I did not cut. I looked around at the table, at the charmed partners, at the uncomfortable wives, at Chloe, who was watching me with hawk-like intensity. I looked at Marcus, who was gazing at Sasha with open adoration, and I looked at Sasha, who was watching him, a small, triumphant smile on her face. "If everyone has enough wine," I said, my voice clear and light, "please, eat up. We have so much to be thankful for tonight." Marcus raised his glass. "Two old friends," he said, looking directly at Sasha. "Two old friends," she echoed. As Marcus turned to set his glass down, he reached for the wine bottle to pour Sasha another glass. He was laughing, his back partially to the door, and right on cue, at exactly 7:30 p.m. The doorbell rang. Marcus frowned, his forced charm finally cracking. "Are you expecting someone else, Ilara?" I smiled. "Just a little surprise, darling." I walked to the heavy front door and pulled it open. Julian and Naomi Vance stood on the threshold. Naomi was magnificent in a dark emerald coat, diamonds glittering at her throat. Julian looked like he had swallowed poison, his face a pale, sickly gray. Absolute silence fell over the dining room. It was broken by a single, sharp, metallic sound. I looked over. Sasha's fork had slipped from her numb hand and clattered onto her china plate. Her face was paper white, her eyes wide with a horror I had only just begun to unleash. Marcus, who had half risen from his chair to carve the turkey, looked frozen, his skin suddenly pale and clammy. His partners stared, confused. Julian, visibly prodded by his wife, stammered, "Marcus, I didn't realize you were entertaining." Naomi cut him off, sweeping past him into the foyer. She radiated a smile that was brighter and colder than any of the diamonds she wore. "Don't be ridiculous, darling. We were just in the neighborhood and wanted to drop by to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving." "What a lovely party." Her eyes scanned the room and landed, with surgical precision, on Sasha. "Sasha, my goodness, what a complete surprise to see you here." Sasha looked like a trapped animal, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound coming out. "Please, come in," I said, my voice the essence of the perfect hostess. "We have plenty of room. I'll just go get 2 more plates." I walked toward the kitchen, but pivoted at the last second to the living room console. The guests watched me, confused. I did not return with plates. I returned holding a small black remote control. With a click, the massive 80-inch television screen on the far wall, usually disguised as a piece of art, hummed to life. "Before we move on to dessert," I said, my voice carrying easily through the stunned silence, "I have a small presentation, a little something about gratitude." "Alara, what is this?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with annoyance. The first image flashed onto the screen. It was high resolution, time-stamped, and undeniable. It was Marcus and Sasha entering the Brown Palace Hotel, his hand possessively on the small of her back. One of the partners' wives gasped. Marcus roared. He stood up, knocking his chair back. "Ilara, turn that off. Turn that off right now." "I don't think I will," I said calmly, and I pressed the button again. The next slide appeared. It was Julian and Sasha, kissing, passionately, outside the Palace Arms restaurant. Julian Vance made a small, choking sound, as if he'd been struck. Marcus, who had been glaring at me, froze. His head turned, slowly, mechanically, to look at Sasha. His expression was a terrifying, uncomprehending mixture of confusion and dawning, volcanic rage. Sasha just stared at the screen, unable to breathe, her face a mask of absolute, cornered horror. "But the data set is incomplete," I continued, as if narrating a quarterly report. I clicked again. A screenshot of a text message. Sasha to Marcus. "He's an easy old fool, Marcus." And his wife, please. "Naomi is so busy planning galas she wouldn't notice." Naomi Vance watched the screen, her expression one of cold, terrible vindication. "And just to ensure all parties are fully informed," I said, clicking one last time. A text from Sasha to a friend in New York, acquired by my research team. The text read, "Marcus is a complete pushover. He's so predictable. He actually thinks this Thanksgiving dinner is his idea." Julian Vance finally found his voice. It was hoarse, but final. He looked at Sasha, his eyes filled with a disgust that burned. "You're fired." He then turned to the frozen, trembling Marcus. "And you, clean out your desk, both of you." Sasha finally broke. The spell was shattered. "You can't," she shrieked, standing up so fast her chair tipped over with a crash. "You can't do this." Naomi Vance finally spoke, her voice slicing through the hysteria. "Oh, he can, dear, and he will." Amid the chaos, the partners and their wives frantically gathering their coats, whispering, desperate to escape the blast radius. Sasha beginning to sob, I walked calmly to Marcus. I placed a thick manila folder on the table in front of him, right on his plate. "This is for you," I said. He numbly opened it. "This is a petition for divorce. And this," I pointed to the second document, "is a copy of our prenuptial agreement, with Clause 17 highlighted. The clause regarding indisputable proof of infidelity. The prenup is void." From my left, Chloe, who had been silent, raised her phone. The camera's red recording light was now on, visible for everyone to see. "And I," she said, her voice clear, "have enough testimony and visual evidence for a spectacular feature story on the deeply toxic corporate culture at Apex Strategy Group." That was the final blow. Julian looked at Chloe, then at Naomi. His face, the face of a titan of industry, crumpled. Naomi. "We are going home," Naomi said, her voice like steel. "And in the morning, you will be calling my lawyer." She turned and walked out the door. Julian, a broken, shuffling old man, followed her. In less than 10 minutes, the room was empty, save for 3 people: me, Marcus, who had sunk back into his chair, staring at the divorce papers, and Sasha, who was openly weeping, her scarlet dress now looking cheap and garish. I looked at my husband, the man who called me simple. "You have 24 hours to pack your things," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. "Don't make this difficult." He didn't look up. I then turned to Sasha. She was a wreck. "I think you should go," I said. "You came here tonight to see what you thought you had lost, but as it turns out, there was nothing left for you to take." I picked up my own wine glass, the one I hadn't touched. I looked at the wreckage of the table, the ruined turkey, the 2 ruined people who had tried to ruin me. "Now," I said, taking a small, satisfied sip, "who wants pumpkin pie?" Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. Please be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.